Good afternoon. We're going to make this a fast one. We'll finish this up in 4 hours. I know you don't want to finish that fast, but we're going to have some discipline here. We'll take 20 minutes each for an introduction and then go from there. Wanted first to do a couple of appreciative words to the official conference volunteers. That'd be Sarah Newsham, Eric Hollinger, Mary, who has an underline. We don't know her last name, but everybody knows her as Mary. Sue Thorson, Rachel Myron, Elizabeth Knube, Amy Chan, Shingo Hamada, Myra Gilliam, Peggy Exendine, Jennifer New, Michael Travis from Anchorage, and that's not to be confused with Michael Travis from Juneau. They both were very good volunteers. Yoko Kugo, George Subildia, Rita Shakely, Mimi Goodwin, and John Smith. Give those volunteers a round of applause, please. And this person's full name, according to Peter Metcalf, Doris Bailey was a major help. That's her full name. Give Doris Bailey a round of applause. And I never get his last name pronounced correct. Okay. And we also want to make sure to appreciate Sharon Shorty and Dwayne Akun. Give them a round of applause. There was a number of things that we wanted to talk about in terms of where do we go from here, and I thought that what I would do, a lot of coffee this throughout the day. One of the things that we had talked about and I want to put on the table for some feedback, and that is, do we want to make sure to cut back the amount of topics that we talk about? And or do we want to make it multiple disciplinary as it is? I do want to give a couple of structured points in that topic, some pros and cons. And then I'm going to ask Peter and then would like to have the other planning committee members to talk about it, especially Steve, these gentlemen up here. And some of the structured points, one, the pro is that there is a real opportunity. I talked to some of the different educational discipline people that were at the conference as presenters, and also some of the people who were attending that were not presenters, that just sat in. The pro is that when there are fewer disciplines that come and present, or you are able to watch and listen and take part in, then it becomes a narrower conference and a narrower focus. And as a result, it would be as though archaeologists were going to their own convention. And one of the things that they like is being able to talk to other disciplines of other educational faculties or disciplines. For example, museum people can talk to archaeologists, etc. Artists can talk to archaeologists and museum people. That kind of cross-discipline is something that they don't get at any other conference. And that's why they feel that this is actually the best conference for them to go to. And so that's a pro. A con is that it's an exceptional amount of work for an exceptional small group of people. And I could name one person who took on this particular conference a lion's share of the load. And I I would guess perhaps the other one. But there's other committee members that did put in a good amount of work. And then there is the cost. And it seems like with the timing of the economy, with the timing of the congressional budget cycle, for example, there was a continuing resolution in Congress. What does that mean to the Clan Conference? Well, that means that the National Science Foundation wasn't able to give us the grant that they wanted to because they weren't given the appropriated money until Congress acted on the budget. So we ended up having to really depend on good faith of contributors. And then in addition to that, the economy tanked. So there were funding philanthropic organizations that didn't have the money that they had even just 2 years ago. One could argue even last year. So when you come to philanthropic organizations for funding, such as Rasmussen Foundation, they're strapped. And so it ends up being a real small amount of funding that we're able to try and get. To put on a conference like this is spendy, but on the other hand, it ends up right back to where it started, grassroots. And so I just wanted to lay out a couple of talking points as we get into this discussion. Where do we go from here? I have my interest in what I would like to see, but I don't want to share that right now. I just wanted to put the discussion out there. I wanted to call on Peter and I want to call on Steve to be the next speakers on this particular topic because we had our own small discussions beforehand, and I know that they've talked to others also. And then we could hear from Dick, and then we can hear from Walter too. And then also we'd like to open it up after that. Peter?
Thank you, Gerry. My response to this is let's not fix what's not broken. This is obviously working. There's the obvious problem with a multidisciplinary approach like we've taken is that it puts a lot of burden, in this case, on Steve. So I think the solution is to find a way to spread the workload. To me, what this event proved was that we can do it on a shoestring. I mean, it was pretty amazing going into this. I know just a few days before the event, we're like kind of grinding our teeth, wondering, are we going to have enough money? You know, we're making commitments and we got to live up to them. And then, you know, like so many things, checks started coming in that we weren't expecting, and you know, we were pretty confident on that we'd have a good response, but we, you know, really had a lot of people show up and pay for this event. So, you know, it's sort of self-supporting. I think the central problem is spreading the workload, because I know Steve was working on this like, you know, full-time, 25 hours a day. So we have to overcome that. But to me, you know, what the beauty of this is that if it was a more narrower focus, I don't know if I would come, you know, because I wouldn't necessarily feel that I was being included or my interests were being answered, depending, of course, on what the focus is. But this sort of thing, it's just, I think it's a wonderful event. It's, you know, you have opportunity to check out all these different things, and because it's multidisciplinary, you know, it's not just for ethnographers or for linguists, and so it's you know, it's a very good concept, and I think it's also, I just want to keep something going that is, you know, I know was Brother Andy's vision, and so to honor that, I think we need to keep working at it, and there's things that we could improve on presentation, and I would really encourage you, those of you in the audience who have ideas to share, to do so, you know, as soon as we're through, as Andy would say, blabbing about this. So, so I'm going to turn this over to Steve.
Yeah, as far as the formula, I agree with Peter that this is working and it seems to be useful to people, and I think it makes sense to keep it broadly based because we are really talking about parts of a whole. The academic model is to separate the culture into components and talk about them as separate issues, when I think part of the message that we get from here is that it's all works together. The art, language, protocol, culture is all one thing, and so it makes sense for us to share with each other across these artificial boundaries. And plus, practically speaking, it appeals to many more people, and it stretches them. Maybe they're not particularly interested in art, but maybe if they happen to see part of an art session, maybe they would become interested in it. So I think it's a good idea to keep it as it is. I do, though, think that we are missing out on some opportunities for more discussion with the audience, more sharing of information, not just people up on the podium talking, but I think we need to work on making more opportunities for a lot more conversation, and that to open it up that way, we may have to cut down on the number of presenters, or make it so that it's not 4 solid days of concurrent sessions. I think we're stretching the capability of human beings to make people sit through four days of concurrent sessions. It just kind of snowballed on us, so I apologize for it. But in a way, it makes it exciting too, to stay up all night after night. But also, I guess one other point I want to make: what to me makes the conference so special is the atmosphere. It is one part an academic style conference, and another part it's traditional. And every session that I went to, there were traditional aspects to it, and I'd like to. And the thing is that eats up time, and it interferes with our carefully plotted out schedule. And I just think we need to make ourselves available to allow for that somehow by being smarter about how we schedule it. I just would hate to see that go away, just to try to keep things in an orderly schedule. We had to do that for the videotaping to make any sense at all. It just had to be plotted out, but in a way the cost of that is we're not able to be as spontaneous as we'd like to be. So, but I'd like to hear from the other organizers, and also you especially, because I'm sure you have some fantastic ideas about what worked and what didn't.
Yeah, I don't have an awful lot to say. I think just other than to mention that Steve was indeed the prime mover and lost more sleep than all of the rest of us put together, probably putting this. But I'd like to say a couple of things. I'm here because of Tlingit Readers Incorporated, and when we were looking for an organization to sponsor it, we were very happy to be able to do this. And Tlingit Readers, as I mentioned, I think the very first night, was another one of Andy's brainstorms. This is back in 1972, and he said, let's organize. We need a small grassroots organization that doesn't have a big bureaucracy, that's based on practitioners. And he was the one that first got us incorporated, and Nora's been the hereditary president since then, and Andy was our vice president. And Dennis Demert is on the board, and Linda Bellardi and Gerry Holthouse. So anyhow, we were happy to do that, and so I wanted to mention that put me in the position of being the treasurer. And I agree with what Peter was saying, that we were just very pleasantly surprised at the support, because we went into this with kind of white knuckles, not knowing what. We have one $5,000 grant from the Alaska Humanities Forum that will pay most of the rent on the hall. And that was it. And we said, boy, Now, what are we going to do? You know, we got to reimburse plane tickets, and we've got to pay for the video and stuff. But I would like to mention as far as I know, three of our biggest contributors. Gold Belt Corporation, a check for helping with the video. Tlingit and Haida Central Council has every day checks are coming in the mail. It's like, oh, how many would we get today? You know, so I mean, it's been a steady flow of support, and their officers have been here, and the Juneau School District sent like 49 people, or the equivalent thereof. So those were, as far as, unless I'm missing any, those were as the treasurer seeing, and of course you. I mean, all of the people who either send in their own checks or paid at the gate. So I'm delighted that it's grassroots, and I mean, it's nice to have NSF money. It's nice to have Rasmussen, but it's nice to be able to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and we'll tell you next week if it worked. We're still counting the money. And if you don't see us here, it's because we took off to Hawaii with the proceeds.
I'll leave your Visa card with us.
Yeah. So, as far as the other, I agree. It's Doric Michaud once used the phrase "an acre of fruitcake," describing these museums and things like that. And this conference too. And I realize I'm not as young as I used to be. I used to be able to stay up all night, partying and going to conferences all day and staying awake, and I can't do that anymore.
Thank you, Richard. I just want to first acknowledge all my co-committee members. We had just numerous teleconferences, and I did about 90% learning, even though I tried to make as many of them as I possibly could. These guys are workhorses, and I couldn't believe the amount of energy they put into it. And it's the first time I've ever been a part of such a thing, and we did it all by phone calls, which I'm just amazed that we can accomplish anything. I've never really been a big believer in teleconferences. We used to do it at our corporations and stuff, and it was always so difficult. When I was in hotel rooms, I'd call home and my ear would get sore from holding up the... Luckily, we got speaker phones now, so it makes it a little bit easier. If any of you had an opportunity to see my presentation the other day, those are the areas that I'm really interested in. I really appreciate it. It's a little bit different than what they've been doing. They allowed me in 2 years ago, and I say allowed me in, and I was just so grateful to be a part of it. But Peter says, don't fix it if it's not broken. But one of the things that I have been noticing, I just turned 65 in January, is we have a lot of problems out in our communities. And with this economic downturn, it's possible that we'll see even more problems. And the other day when I mentioned that all the old truths that our elders carried with them, learned from each other, passed down through hundreds and thousands of years, those things are still useful. They still apply to today's life. And I'd like to see us put a little bit more into those areas and to help people. It's just wonderful to document everything, but we want to be sure that we have a little bit in there so they can take it back in their lives and use it in their family upgrowing. And I'm not talking about social services, I'm talking about spirituality. The reason why the clan systems were the same all over the world is because they tapped the spirituality that was in themselves. So when people ask for something and learn how to ask for something and learn how to be persistent in asking for something, guess what? It'll all be the same. That's why the clan systems in Central Europe and Africa, in South America and Australia can be traced. And if we look closely at it, it's just like ours. I'll give you an example. When you go to Ireland, their people, their uncles brought up the boys in Ireland too. And you can trace it into Europe, you can trace it into Africa. And the reason why it was that way is because we all tapped the spiritual part of life to learn how to live. That's why it looks the same. And I think we need to get a little bit over in that area. What were clans? How did they function? How were they organized? What did our elders know? And we actually have access to that information. If we took Charlie Joseph, just Charlie Joseph alone, and listened to his recordings, we could put several conferences on just on Charlie Joseph. Fabulous individual, came from Dry Bay. And I think we need to start dipping into that pool a little bit. But I agree with you, Peter. I know this is working, but I do know that there is a big call. Some of you from the Juneau area, they just went through a wave of suicides. Guess whose kids those were? A lot of them are our kids. And that seems like a difficult issue, but if we dip into the spiritual part of life, we'll start to solve those kind of problems. And our elders knew how to do that. It's almost unheard of. None of the stories I've studied ever showed that we had a pattern of suicides in the old days. We didn't have that sort of problem. And we were organized and we could stay together and we knew how to have stable communities. We're doing things today we never did in the past. And it's okay to bring those things up because, like Austin Hammond said, one time a tourist walked up to Austin Hammond and he said, "Tell us about your culture." And Austin says, "Read the Bible." And if we look closely in the Bible, there isn't anything that our people didn't know about that's in the Bible, and vice versa. It's all the same. And we look at it closely, the main issue, the bottom line issue, is learning how to call for help. If you look at the success of the AA program, the individual that never gets into the 12-step, he stays drunk all his life. But the person who finally turns and calls on a higher power for help starts to succeed. He gets strong and he pulls out of it. And it's a program that's succeeded all over the world. It's a growing program. You know, in Juneau, there's 42 AA programs going on in Juneau. And you look closely at our culture, it's the same thing. We didn't invent the 12 steps, but there's nothing in the 12-step program that our culture doesn't have. So I think we need to spread out just a little bit in this area, not too much, obviously, but enough where we can start to document things that work, and there's enough elders' information that can allude to this fact, and like Charlie Joseph is one I mentioned, and many aspects of the work that Richard and Nora have been doing. Give you an example. Let me get into a little bit of what Jessie Dalton did, and I'm sure many of you have read this. When she compares her love for an individual at a potlatch with the making of driftwood. Just a beautiful story. She talks about how the river moves over a little bit and the tree falls into the water and it rolls down into the ocean and it breaks up and the branches come off and the needles come off and finally it's pounding on the beach and finally a big storm comes and smashes all the branches up and takes the driftwood way up into the strawberry patch and the grass and stuff. And there it is, beautiful, laying there, all finished. And then she says, "That's how my love is for you." Now, to teach each other how to do that again would be a very valuable thing, and clans did that. Ravens speaking to eagles, eagles speaking to ravens. Clifford Williams come up to me one day and he says, "When I was a young man, these potlatches was just nothing but love, back and forth, back and forth." And that's the kind of the clan system, things that I'd like to see us recover, how to talk with one another. My good friend Mr. Dennis back there talked about it, what comes out of our mouth. We need to start teaching each other again how to speak. I didn't grow up with elders, and I'm amazed. I'm 65, and still the mistakes that I make talking to people, I'm amazed at it because I didn't have the right teachers. That kind of stuff we need to bring back, and I think this is an institution that can play a role in doing that. Who else is going to do it? Nobody else is going to do it now. George Jim, I spent some time with George Jim in a hospital, and he said, you know, there was one time, he said, just the elders spoke to one another, the clan leaders. That's the only one talk. And he says, we as young people should grow up listening to them talk, and then it'll be our turn someday. No sense in being in a hurry. We might as well listen to them and learn how to do it right. Those are the kinds of systems of the clans that I would like to see come back, because I see it. We need it. We need to have something to speak, a way, a method of speaking correctly to one another. And the other thing, in closing, I just want to appreciate Wayne and Grandma Susie. We need more of that. We need laughter. And you know, not many people know this, but when Jesus was on earth, he kept people laughing all the time. He was a bundle of laughter. But you know, it was 7 years after he passed away. That's why we don't see it in the Bible. But he talks about it. He says joy and happiness. That's where, if you listen to me, that's where we're going to go to. Well, our people knew that too. Now, scientifically, we're finding out that when we laugh, there's endorphins in our body that's released. It not only helps us heal, but it can prolong long times. Somebody just mentioned 4 days, and Gerry just mentioned 4 days. It was nothing to have a 4 to 7 day potlatch in the old days. And do you think everybody went to sleep? No. The laughter was so much, these endorphins kept us going for days and days and days. Can we do that today? No. Because we've fallen out of the knowledge how to do that. So those things are still accessible to us. It's just we have to reach deeper into culture, like the material. I know Lorraine has a lot of material from the Kushkekwan and the people that she's from, our Tluknakari people, and others have information. We need to encourage our people to bring those old tapes out so we can research them and look at them, and then compose and put them together in such a way where we can bring them to a conference like this, just like all the demonstrations we've seen, but it specifically would be in areas who our people were and why they made these potlatches work, and why the love that they shared with one another was healthy for us again. So anyway, I apologize for taking probably a couple minutes more than I should. Thank you.
I like how Walter Porter talks about laughter so seriously.
Well, I'll tell you a real short one. This is about Chief Dan Katzik up there in Klekwan. One day, a whole busload of people, they used to entertain tourists, and a whole busload, and it was just raining really hard. Lena Farkas tells the story. It was raining so hard, and everybody had their umbrellas and their rain gear, and they all run up, and Mrs. Katz says, come on, and they all run up there, and Dan's already carving there. And they all got around him, and they're just dripping wet, and what did they do? They started talking about their recollection of the big rain that they saw one time in their life. And each of them traded stories all the way around. And finally, the last person told her story, and Dan put down his tools, and he looked up. You know, he had the great big bushy eyebrows like that, and he looked up like that, and he says, one time, it rained so hard in Klekwan that all the ducks drowned. So there's lots of stories like that. We need to dig more there. I know there's a lot of you out there that know funny stories. And last time when I was talking to Paul Jackson, he said, we should have a part of our conference that just revolves around humor. And certainly we got to have our guests from Canada again and share that with everybody. That was so much fun last night. Good, thank you.
Thank you, Walter. I did have a chance to talk to Bert Adams, and I know David Sam has some thought and input about some of the conferences. I wonder if I could call upon you. And I do have to apologize a little bit on behalf of the planning committee about this kind of format where we're sitting up here at a table. It feels kind of dumb. It goes counter culture to the clan structure, but part of it has to do with what we have found is that next year, 2 years from now, when KATH-TV has these on DVD, that it is a lot easier to see people. So it lends itself a lot better to the television and trying to document the clan conference presenters and people who talk. And so we can think about something that is a lot more of us in terms of not having this kind of format and structure, and have it a little bit more, a lot less we speak, you listen kind of format. But there are some that are some topics that there are really good presenters that need to have this kind of structure, because just really well researched information that and then they have to have the technology stuff in order to present. So this kind of format in some cases are important, but otherwise we can adapt and adjust to something that is more us. Bert, I don't know if you want to come up and speak. David, I don't know if you want to come up and speak too, but we wanted to get away from this we talk, you listen format right now and hear from you.
Good cheese, Gerry. I was really impressed with what happened, the past 4 days, and congratulations to a job well done. And I know that you were all overworked. I intended to come early, and then I had to back out, and then I decided that I was going to come, and you guys were able to accommodate me as a presenter, so I really appreciate that. Thank goodness, cheese. Some of the things that you've talked about already is I fully, agree with. We do need to hang on to our culture. But you also said that we need to know where you're going to go after this. And somehow or another, these future conferences are going to have to try to pull our culture and take us into the future as well. And I think that's how this thing should be designed. I have a date with my wife at 4:15, so I'm going to make this very short. But I'd just like to say in closing, Gerry, this summer I met you at the hospital in Anchorage. And I thought he was up there for his own health, but he told me that his brother was there trying to battle cancer. And I wanted to meet with Andy, but I know that he was very weak and resting a lot. And the day that I was going to come back home, I gave him a call, and we talked for only a couple of minutes. And I told him that I was sorry for his condition, that I hope he gets better. And then I said, I'm going home this afternoon, Andy, so in case, I don't see you real soon, I want to wish you well. And you know what he said? Safe journey home, Bert. And I'll always remember that. Safe journey home. And it was only a couple weeks after that when he too walked into the forest. And and so, he was a very impressive man to me. For all of you who don't know it, we come from the same family stem. And it's always, a pleasure to be able to see Andy or Gerry or Ellen. I haven't seen her, very often, but she knows what my nickname is. I'm not going to let you tell her, have her tell you that, but her and my Aunt Carol are only ones I think here that know what my nickname is. And
I don't know it.
Pardon?
I don't know it.
You don't know it? Oh, you know it, Walter. But anyhow, thanks. Thanks for a job well done, you guys, and I do look forward to participating with this in the future. Another thing, one thing I would like to do, Richard and Nora, is give a presentation here about our expatades down in the Dry Bay area, Gunahu. And I think that's, taking care of culture and then also, ideas on how we can go into the future. Gunachish.
I was thinking the other day about accessibility. And to be accessible, I think for young people, the idea about interaction, I think, is crucial because I'd like to. It's been so good to hear the way participants, people maybe not that do not have access to the microphones as readily as panel members do. So maybe a mic, depending upon the session, and I don't know how that would be done, but to have maybe microphones out on the floor. Because I know when you get a bunch of Tlingit go-to-meetings, it can get very loud, and it may be difficult to decide if people are really pissed off about something or just want to be heard, and it may be one and the same. But I think also too, I really appreciate seeing so many people, seeing the elders, and especially as some of the activities that develop and take these sessions take a life as their own, as it should be, because I hear Walter talking about some of the AA programs or 12-step programs and how they may be similar or the result is similar. When you see these things happen, because it happens for me as I look and watch and hear the goodness of the people. And it is good. I like what Peter had mentioned about if it works, don't fix it. But on the other side of this, I think about my granddaughter, who is living in Anchorage now, and she is a quarter Tlingit, a quarter Athabascan, and half Yupik. And I watch her and think, is she going to be able to hear this? Or is she going to look at me and wonder, is it real? So accessibility of these videos through podcasting, through because you look around at a lot of folks, and I'm sure there's countless iPhones sitting in this room right now. So the accessibility is there more than we realize. I work in a radio station, and I wonder about digital transmission, and there's more stations developing now, or there's more accessibility, because if you have an iPhone, you have access to any of this, but it needs to be available. So, think about that.
Well, that's a Dan Edelane question. We need you to get digitized, Dan, if you haven't already. And but that's a great discussion. We did want KATH-TV to be in on some of this discussion when it comes to the IT stuff or broadcast stuff or getting it onto DVD. And I know that some of the challenge, I know both him and Dan are here. So like I say, we brought them here, and they could be in on this discussion. And how do we peek into the current technology and make it more accessible? And some of it is ownership. We have to be careful, I think, when it comes to intellectual and cultural property rights, what gets shared, what we have permission to share, and those kinds of details. Up until now, there hasn't been any kind of controversy, but we have to make sure and be aware and respect the culture in terms of that kind of point, cultural and intellectual property rights, and broadcasting that, getting permission. Some of it's pretty sensitive. And then also, if there is income derived from that, where does it go? So these are kinds of questions we can't answer necessarily today. Some of it we can. in terms of process, intellectual cultural property rights getting permission is probably something that we'd need to think about getting a form and working on that. And then also, if we don't get it, then don't broadcast it. Don't record it. So those are some simple things that we could do. Or if we do record it, give them the master of that clan, the house taker, the caretaker, the Hitsudi. But at any rate, Dan or Fred? Rick. Sorry, Rick. Why don't you come up and we can talk about the broadcast ability in the future using today's technology. You just right there, Rick, is fine.
I would just address how it went in terms of people's acceptance of the recording.
We have actually everybody's been really cooperative about sharing their presentations of things of video in order that we can include it within the DVDs that we produce. I think the first thing that I wanted to say is I wanted to congratulate this board and Andy's vision about really how far they've carried the concept of sharing our knowledge. You know, everybody can sit within an environment like this and listen to presentations and take home what they heard, but the visual documentation of it carries it so much farther and on into future generations. It's truly sharing our knowledge and preserving it as well. It's been said that the past is what actually happened. History is merely what somebody wrote down. But with this visual documentation of it, it's a true preservation of that knowledge so that it can be shared in a much broader spectrum than merely the people that just showed up here at the conference. And I think that's very, very important. And for that, I commend the vision of the board and Andy, the committee organizers, to take the documentation of this clan conference to that level. And it could even reach more extensively than that. Gentleman was talking about accessibility, and you could even go so far as to take video that had been gathered and produced, and it can be encoded into flash videos and posted on a website where people can watch it on demand, things like that. There's any number of avenues like that where this information could be disseminated to the public at large in a much more efficient fashion. And technology is evolving at such a rate that, I mean, you never know really where that can go.
Beam me up, Scotty.
Yeah, that's kind of where it's going to. Quite an immense amount of work actually to document this on video and produce the DVD sets that we have. Suppose that you're all wandering through the lobby and had seen the set that we produced 2 years ago, 39 DVDs. We collected something along the order of, I think in the final, there was 62 and a half hours or something like that of video that we collected onto 39 DVD set encompassing all 4 days of the conference in Sitka. I think Peter, 5 days, Peter coined it very well when he said that if you had 3.5 days and a case of Red Bull, you could watch it all in one sitting. I don't know if anybody could actually disseminate that much knowledge during the course of that, but the beauty of it is that it's there as a record that will exist for many, many years to come and on into future generations. And that's truly the beauty of the sharing our knowledge, that years from now, your children, your children's children and grandchildren can look back and see what was said and how it was spoken, and the knowledge can reach far, far into the future, and that's a very beautiful thing. We've always felt our job is merely videographers, we document an event. We attempt to make the audio and video look as good as it can. And we gather the PowerPoint presentations and we convert them to put them into the video so that you get a much better look at the presentations than what the camera is able to shoot off a video screen. It makes for a very good looking DVD. And while we know that that's merely our job to produce that DVD, we realize the import of the task that we're undertaking and the broader value of it, in that we are helping to fulfill Andy's vision of truly sharing our knowledge. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And we hope to be able to continue on with that. It's an enormous task. It takes a great deal of expensive equipment. It takes a lot of time and many hours, which I'm sure a cameraman in the back can attest to as well. But I think it's a very valuable thing.
I was approached by, I'm Dan Edelane, and I own the business. I'm from Sitka, and I've been videotaping since the early 1970s. I've been involved in each of the Clans and Tribes Conference. When Andy, when he was from Sitka at the time, and Peter cornered me and said, you need to come to Haines and Klukwan. And didn't know where they were, and we showed up and recorded each of the events since then, including the Ketchikan. Of course, it was easy in Sitka. So we're very committed to doing this. We're just establishing and have established a TV station in Anchorage. Its motto is bringing urban and rural Alaska together. It's the only one of its kind in the state. And we're hoping to use some of this programming to show the rest of the state what it is like for the Tlingit and the southeast programs that we have here. So if you need to talk with our technicians, because I'm not a technician, but I'm very interested in what is happening and excited about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I will say that compared to other bids that have come in, Dan Edelane's bid has been consistently a modest bid. And for the modest amount of money that he charges, there is a pretty good DVD that comes out. I wanted to call on Aunt Ellen Hope Hayes. If you had a word or two, maybe some wisdom you can bestow on us, either bless us or kick us out of the house, one of the two. We're hoping you bless us, but if you kick us out of the house, we'll understand.
Thank you. I was seeing in my mind, as looking back at the last conferences over the years, the first conference and this one, we've been preparing as a group of people interested in several aspects of our future. And in 1990, it was the Repatriation Act. That was an act that has resulted in this conference too. A big part of that act has been carried on by the Central Council through Harold. There's so much that he was ready to do. We're ready to do something now, and that's to proceed with some map, knowing where we're going with the future. We have, 24 months till the next. So I'm anxious that we know where we want to go and know why we want to go there. and what we as individuals can do in our communities with the material that has been presented to us, and we had options of choices of what sessions we wanted to go to. The question seems to me was, what do you think, where do you think, and what do you think about the time between now and the next conference? Where do we want to go? How are we going to present it to our group at home? What do the young people feel that because you shared with them, this whole thing is about sharing. That was a great title, that sharing title. We're doing this because of how we feel about the issue and what the young people can therefore use as guides for what they can contribute. So that's our work as I see it, is to make a report at home, keep it alive, let the committee know. Are you going to still be the same committee for the next couple of years?
Yeah, we will, Steve.
He's the one that looks dubious about that. I can understand. So I am glad for these few minutes that the committee has given toward looking toward where are we going. And my vision is that we had canoes, we were maritime people, and we knew where we were going. You wouldn't untie the canoe and just let it go. You had to have somebody in charge, and you had to know when you got at a certain point. So that's what these few minutes to me are making an effort to do, is to know where we're going and why.
We're going to start charging for people to come to the microphone now. $3 a person. We have $3 over here. Come on forward, please. And Dwayne, Sharon, come on forward, and you'll be after him.
Thank you very much. My name is Harry Charklane. I'm from Hona. I'm from the Ducklington clan. And I want to comment how wonderful the time that I have spent here has been an eye-opener for me, and the aspect of the point of view that to share our knowledge is to share our way of life, and you cannot really focus on one particular thing, because our way of life is broad, span, it's so wide, and it's not really complicated. The complication comes when you're too educated for your own good. And by that I mean that when you start making things a personal matter, instead of focusing on how, as you explained, to laugh, and yet still know the reality of our people that are committing suicide. That's the reality that I have had to face in our little community. Just in the last 3 months, we had 3 young people commit suicide with a gun. I have some families that are threatened to commit suicide. This is reality. And I didn't want to bring this about as a personal matter, but this is a good thing that we need to see. We need to focus on what we're going to tell our children. I was in Anchorage and I went to see the hospital. I have a family member that is contemplating suicide. Do you know what day this was? Martin Luther Day. Do you know what they told me at the place? Go across the street and go into the building and talk to the human services or whatever they call it. So I went across the street and I went to the door and it was locked, closed for a holiday. So I went back to the front desk and I said, they're closed. He says, well, I'm sorry, I can't help you. He says, do you mean to tell me people don't commit suicide on holidays? I says, I need some help right now. What would you do if somebody told you personally, I'm tired of it all? Well, I'm really off track here, but I'm thinking this is a good project. And you know, I've heard Clinton Hyder talk about it. I've heard Alaska Native Brotherhood and Alaska Native Sisterhood talk about it. I've heard other people talk about it. I've heard other organizations talk about it. But it's our people that are having this problem. Why? I don't know why. I don't have the answer. But this is something that we need to really look into. And to be able to speak to our elders and ask them, what can we do? How can we talk to them? That was $2 worth. I have 3 hours and 50 minutes left. That to be a good trinket. I know I came from one of the clan sessions, and I did speak up very loudly. And I did that to be heard. And there was no point in time that any time that was given for questions to be asked. So in my ignorance, I stood up and yelled out, I have a question. To tell a Tlingit, you have 4 hours, he's very happy. But in actuality, if you're going to walk the talk, I think I got it all mixed up. I'm nervous, but if you're going to talk the talk, walk the talk. There are many people that I have seen saying, this is the way it is. And do you know what else? When I've gone to a memorial service, to a coex, to a potluck, to a 40-day party, or any event that we have, you are insulting your ancestors when you don't use the opposite tribe to help you in your time of grief. When you do everything by yourself, this clan workshop should open up to those eyes, because having the other opposite tribe, clan, help you out is one of the greatest honors. And I know this happened in my town. The family was big. Lots of people. The family. My family alone. I come from the Marvin Chartline and Marvin. There's a lot of history in there. We did our tree, and we have over 700 people alive right now that are either married or in the clan. While I'm on that, 25 to 50 years from now, and one of the gentlemen that spoke, where are our grandchildren, great-grandchildren going to be? And how are they going to hear what's going on? You know, I forget which one of you said, beam me up spot. You know that, do you see a Tlingit in that movie? I don't think we made it that far. What I'm saying is, anyone that's 50 years old and up have very little knowledge of our Tlingit language, fluently speaking. A little humor on the side. I was in Anchorage, and by the way, I had 3 hours and a half to go. I was in Anchorage, and I'm not going to take the 4 hours. I was in Anchorage, and I was trying to learn how to say some words and Tlingit, and it's not very easy to speak it. It's very difficult words to say. Everybody in the northern part of Southeast Alaska, and then the southern part of Southeast Alaska have a different dialect. So you have a very strong and hard task before you. And I'm trying to hurry here. I just got a little piece of paper, and I already talked 15 minutes. I was going to another one of your sessions, and it had to do with internet or archives. This really bothered me. And our technology is so advanced that you can get on a computer and type in seagull eggs. They'll give you a picture of a seagull. They'll give you a picture where the seagull lays the egg. They'll give you a picture of how that seagull egg looks, and they'll give you when that seagull egg is being laid. Do you know what I'm telling you? I'm telling you, I'm not the only one that knows it anymore. Somebody down in New York City, Washington, D.C., Europe, www, World Wide Wide, knows how to get a seagull egg. That's just once. I spent 2 days looking on the internet, and I went under the NOAA to tell you about the seaweed. You know, they're talking about the clams, talking about the cockles, talking about the gumboots. This is our food. It's no longer going to be our food. It's a World Wide Web's food. A lot of people are going to start saying, hey, not just the herring eggs that taste good anymore. We want not only the seaweed, but we want some of them clam beds. See what I'm saying? Number 3. $50 and I think it's more credit, but that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. Take 50 years away from now. We just celebrated 50 years of statehood. Put 50 more years on there. How many of our children are going to be 100% Tlingit? Think about that. We have an adoptions. We need to choose our words carefully, how we speak, and saying, I don't think that any people that are adopted have anything to do with Tlinkits. That's just an example. I'm not jabbing or pointing my finger at anybody, but these are sensitive subjects, and that's the reality of it. Suicide and how you speak to people and telling them about your personal opinion. You know, I think I'm done. Konestish.
Thank you.
I'll tell you what prompted me to stay for this session. I was talking to Steve, and he said, where do we go from here? And I was hooked. Because I watched Steve. I know how Steve works. He probably worked day and night. And then the other comment that it caught my attention, somebody said, spread the workload. Now, how do you spread the workload? I have worked as a registrar for the League of Women Voters on the West Coast level, and also worked as a registrar with another woman for the Juneau Garden Club that held their convention here in Juneau. I learned about registration and how it should be done. And that's one committee that could be set up to take the load off Steve. And using volunteers is a gratifying job, not only for the committee, but for the person that's doing the volunteering. I know that because I do a lot of volunteer work since I've retired. Somebody said, drop a day. Well, I think you dropped a day this time, right? And apparently, it hasn't worked because you've got so many presenters now. So the issues then might be, somebody said up there, narrow it down, but if you do narrow it down, something is going to suffer. So we have to figure out how that can be done. And my suggestion is probably send a survey to the attendees about what issues that they liked best, what they thought was necessary, and stay within that category of what they're doing, their presentation. The other thing, and I noticed this myself, was that all of you worked on the program. It seemed like all of you were presenters, not only presenters, but on the whole committee. Something's got to be done about that. You know, you could have a committee that just works solely on the 4-day conference. That way, the presenters would be able to go up there and do their job well. And the other thing is, this was pretty cheap registration. I've been to quite a few conventions where I paid into the hundreds, even if I was presenting, to attend a conference. That's another category you can take, or several different categories of payment. The students at the university, I know, I saw them out there. They could be used to volunteer, and maybe you can talk to John Pugh, the chancellor, on giving them credit for doing that. Funding, let me see, somebody talked about high technology. Well, there's a man sitting down there in Kirkland. His name is Bill Gates, and he gives away billions of dollars. He's not the only one. There's Paul Newman, who is Indian himself, and who is known to have given away millions of dollars, billions of dollars, to such organizations as this. Where are my friends? Here. Thank you very much for my 2 cents.
Sheesh. They're going to recruit you now. I just wanted to thank the clan conference, Gunishish, and all the committee members, the ones who are here and not here. It was a privilege to be here. I feel that this conference for me was more about building relationship from inland to coastal, and that's my interest. It's good to get to know everybody a little bit more. I know my auntie was doing a little bit of clan research. I'm interested in hearing about that. And just to, you know, like, was it yesterday? I had seal meat. It was delicious. And I'm just, yeah, I feel really, and as a presenter, I felt really respected and taken care of. And And I really appreciate, Gerry, your organizational stance. I could see it, and it's pretty cool. It's going to be an example for me. And thank you, Steve, so much for clearly all your hard work. Sheesh, and it's nice to meet you finally. So thank you.
Gunchish Alquan, Gunchish Spaghetti Wan, Hachoni Tlingit. And you fed us good, Gunchish, to all the organizers and all the volunteers, and you fed us good, you looked after us, you made us feel welcome. And I think that's what I'm going to take back and tell my people back at home, just how well you looked after us and how you honored us. It makes us feel good. I think one of the things that I noticed with working on my documentary and stuff is we've lost our voice was taken away from us by government and by institutions. So I think this is one way that we're regaining our voice. I think it would be good too, from what other people have said, more opportunities to have a two-way conversation between presenters and give the people an opportunity to be able to speak and to share all the wisdom that they bring from their lives as well. I know that there's an idea out there, and I think to a possibility about the next clan conference being invited to the Yukon. And I think we'll continue having that discussion, and we'll see if it's a possibility, if we can work that out. And because I think if we do that, I think it'd be an honor to have the conference up in our territory, to invite you up as well. One of the things that we're doing with our inland gathering that we're having this July is we're giving an opportunity. One of the main events that's going to take place is that in the mornings, we're going to give all our elders an opportunity just to sit and talk among themselves, like what was mentioned, and us young ones will just sit around and listen and learn from them. I think that's going to be the highlight, so that we can, instead of trying to plan everything and we want this and we want that, just to listen to the elders and give them that opportunity to share among themselves and to share with us, the younger generation. So, and we learned a lot down here, and we hope that we were able to share a lot of our knowledge and wisdom with you as well. And so, Gunchish.
Sheesh.
Thank you also for the wonderful dance lesson last night. It was, and we will always remember it's not the size of the tail feather, but how we flutter it.
And where's your $3?
Thank you all, and all of you gentlemen sitting up there and looking at some of your faces reminds me of Celebration 82, Peter, when we worked with you, and my brother-in-law Chukanedi, Chish, and Walter worked with Austin Hammond, and I'm having that opportunity to work with the two gentlemen here, Gerry, and I'm not sure what Steve. But I attended the first clan conference in Haines, and I wasn't on the panel, but a friend of mine, Richard Jackson, asked me to present with him at that time. And the subject was Tlingits in transition. And I would just like to also say, to all of you that are here, and to say thank you, for, to be here. What a privilege to sit here among people who want to uplift our culture, to promote our culture, to try and reach back to help us to guide us in the way our ancestors did things. I'd like to just help clarify or maybe validate, feeling that, I don't feel like an expert. I don't want to sound like an expert. And I've always heard our elders, Austin Hammond, and I'll start off like this. It says, "Chai dekat nu de kachuhan." And what does that mean what that says? Actually, it says, "You will forgive me if I say something wrong. You know, why did they say that? You know, I think to myself, why would these elders who spoke so eloquently and who had so much knowledge would say something like that? In reality, when I think about it, is because they said that because they felt humble and they didn't feel like they knew everything. They thought that surely there's something I might miss, and surely there might be something I'll say that might offend somebody. So that's why I felt like they may have said that. Because we're taught to say things very carefully to make sure that, you know, we don't offend each other. And some of the elders I worked with, you know, I was looking at this also, is that sometimes we need clarification, and sometimes we may have a cataract and don't even realize it. You know, and when you have one, you really don't know, because you think you're something just not too clear in your eyes. So maybe it's because we don't know so much about our culture, we don't see very clearly. One of the things that, you know, I like to just mention some names from 1981-82 celebration. Judson Brown, you know, I worked with him in celebration, and then Robert Martin, Willis Peters, George Davis, Austin Hammond, Paul Henry, Thomas Jackson, Patrick Paul, Richard Shakely, William Johnson, Walter Soboloff, David Katzik, Paul Jackson, Horace Marks, Matthew Fred, and my mother, my dad. You know, I grew up speaking Tlingit. My mother mentioned to me that you really spoke really good Tlingit when you were younger. And I have difficulty still today to speak Tlingit, you know, and I feel sometimes intimidated because I know there are better speakers out there and can understand and speak better than I can. But still, I can't allow that to stop me, because it doesn't stop a lot of us who hardly know Tlingit. And you know, I don't know how else to put this, but you know, when I started off, it's just you know, you will forgive me, but and I sat there at one of the presenters, and I felt this kind of speaking to me should be spoken to of only one particular clan, if that's what they want to say or that's what they want to do. Because I was sitting there in the fence. You know, I guess what I'm saying from here, without saying any more, not trying to create problems or poke my finger at anybody, but we want to do the best thing we can. Because one of the things, when I sat with the elders and when we sat in the planning committee with all the elders, they were very careful in using their words, and they were also very careful. We have to be careful who we choose to put up in front, who knows how to speak, who knows how to use their words very good, and who won't put their personal feelings in there. And so they said our culture is like a pretty glass ball, like in, you know, like in the discos, they have the big glass ball. And if it falls, if we're not careful and it falls, we might be able to put it back together, but it won't be as pretty. And so they spoke in ways, and they had their, you know, their differences, but they came to a consensus to what, you know, they felt would be the closest to what would represent us as a people, and which would create a good feeling among all of us, you know, and even still then, there were still problems, and there were still things that took place. You know, we can't please everybody. But, you know, like, you know, I appreciate my friend Gerry Charclane. He's a clan brother. He's a Taktintan, Raven side. I'm a Raven side on the Tlaquaquati side. And my sister, I learned a lot of things from my sister just by listening to her, what she talks about, how she says things, and, you know, and sharing things helps direct my life and what I should do.
And one of the things too that is Austin Hammond, he trained me in many ways, talked to me in many ways, directed me in many ways. You were there when I was up at Raven House, helped with the Chilkoot Culture Camp, you know, and all those different things. What I'm trying to say is that, you know, let's be more careful in who we choose to speak to our people. And I think that's what my friend was referring to. Choose our words very carefully. We don't know who we're going to offend, and I'm not trying to offend nobody. I don't want it. That's not what I'm here to do. Austin would always say there's a time you would have to come and speak to help the people, not to hurt the people, to make sure your words are encouraging. And I stand here, I'm glad I'm not looking down at you. I'm glad I'm looking up to you. And that's the way I feel, because this organization is bigger than me. It's bigger than all of us. And I know I wanted to also speak about Andy. And when I was sitting there, I said, I need to be very careful because we haven't done his rights yet. You know, and so I need to be very careful. I saw him downtown, just to let you know. And he came to me, hey, hi, Paul. And he grabbed me by the hand, and he shook my hand. And he looked at me in the eyes, and he says, I love you. I didn't know he was going through what he was going through at the time. That did something to me. Said a lot to me as him as being a person, a man. Tlingit. So with that, you know, not trying to make everything any, you know, I don't want to blow up anything that may not be really there, but some things just to say, let us be careful, and hopefully we all walk more softly and encouraging and helping. And I know that's what you're doing, and I know that's what you want to do. And I just thank you for this time and opportunity that you've given me and listening to me.
Thank you, Paul. Good words.
I'm just going to be very, very brief. I want to thank you for allowing this clan conference to be held on the homeland of the Akwán. It really touched me very deeply to have you here. And I agree with Paul, but I think what we're really doing is making bridges. We shouldn't tear down those bridges. Those of you who are scholars and love our culture so much, I love your enthusiasm. So much of us, we take it for granted. And I love your energy and your dedication. So I'm going to remain your friend and work with you. Especially you, Steve, Richard, Peter. And ending this for me, this weekend, I haven't been able to delete the emails from Andy. I haven't been able to do that. But this weekend, I am going to delete those emails, and I am going to move on with my life, because I believe that's what Andy would have wanted us to do. So this clan conference has allowed me to do that, and from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for the strength that I have to push that delete button. So Ganeshtish for hosting it here.
Thank you, Bob. Do we have another $3 in the audience? $3 American or Canadian, eh?
Hi, my name's Lina, My Tlingit name is Shachwense. I'm Shingo Katie. And first of all, I would like to thank you. This is a blessing. Thank you. This is real proof that God answers prayers. This is, all of you are here is a blessing, because this has been long overdue, and you will be our voices. You will help. We help each other, and we appreciate that because we share this land. We're on the same land, and it's beautiful, God's green country, and we must treasure it, preserve it, and conserve. That's the most important thing. Is I didn't want you to close without us showing, me being able to show my appreciation and tell you that I'm looking forward to the next one. But I have a suggestion, though. I know there's going to be a lot more. I can see it. It's going to be bigger and bigger. It's going to grow. Be ready, because God's sweeping our country. He's time is coming, and we must prepare ourselves. If you can possibly schedule this when gold medal's not on, or a celebration or something, I think that you be tearing down these walls for more people to participate, because I know that there's a lot of concerns in the communities, and it's nice to see everyone from out of town, and welcome here, and look forward to seeing you again for another one. I'm excited about it. Thank you.
I just wanted to say, before the next speaker comes, go ahead and come forward, about the scheduling. One of the things that Brother Andy was so good about is challenging the way people think, because he knew that after they had changed the way they think, the way they acted followed immediately. And for 30 years now, we have talked about, no, you can't schedule anything around gold medal. Gold medal is sanctum against anything, because there had been some efforts. Like when, for example, the corporations were formed. Well, let's have a corporation board meeting, and I've never been on a corporation board. Brother Andy was, with the Sciatica Inc. But what I'm saying is that they would say, well, let's do that on gold medal. And I said, well, no, nobody's going to attend. Everybody will go to the basketball games. And so he'd been in that frame of mind himself for decades. But for the past 5 years of his life, it was a frustration with him. And before he found out and he was diagnosed with cancer, and we were planning this one, he challenged the way we thought. This is one of his last big challenges of the way we think. And he said, let's have it during gold medal. People will come. There are people who go to basketball games, and there are those who do not go. And even those who go to the basketball games won't go to every game, every night. And so they will attend. And so we thought, as a planning committee, to give it a try and see what other vision Andy had in terms of scheduling. And one other thing about celebration, we purposely have it on the off year of celebration. So next year we will not have it. We never will have it during celebration year, because we know there is that time of celebration that there's a lot of dedicated focus on that, and it should be. So in order to coordinate the best that we can, it's on the off year of celebration.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you for all of your hard work. I'm Katie Bunn-Marcuse from the University of Washington.
And I wanted to thank Bob Sam for his words, and his words gave me the courage to come up here. I want to say, as a non-native researcher, that I have felt so welcomed and so honored and supported in my work here, and that this is the most important conference I go to. That's how I feel about it. This is the chance for me to bring the work I do and to be responsible for that work and to be open to fixing my mistakes, whether they're informational or, more importantly, in attitude or other things that might need help, and also to hear from people what it is that we can do that can be helpful, and Steve is a role model for that. So I just wanted to say that, and also that it's so wonderful to come and not speak to everybody just in my discipline, but to hear all of the things that go on, and the traditional things and the academic things and everything that goes on. So I just honor you, and this is just such an important conference. So Ganesh.
We will waive the $3 for you.
I just wanted to address the issue of the selection of speakers. One of the reasons why we have 4 solid days of concurrent sessions is because every time we've put the word out about this, we've had a flood of people offering to make presentations, and at least for the last 2 conferences that I've been involved with, we haven't just invited who we wanted to speak. We've opened it up for anybody. We've sent out word. We have hundreds of people on our email list now, and we've spread the word as best we could to invite people to volunteer to give presentations. And as long as I've been involved with it, we haven't gone through a selection process where we or a program committee sit and judge of who is qualified to speak on a given subject. We're totally reliant on the presenters to go through whatever clearance process they deem necessary to speak on this topic, to get the permission from the right authorities, clan leaders, or others to be able to speak to this. And we've been very reluctant to impose our own attitudes or philosophies into selecting the speakers. It's not that we don't have our own opinions about things, it's just that we don't feel it appropriate to sit in judge of people who are seriously engaging in study of the culture and practice of the culture. Now, there's nothing that says we have to continue to do it that way. I would ask if any of you have suggestions on how to be more selective or how to be fair about making such a selection. There may be a solution to this, but like I said, this may not be the right group of people to decide who speaks at the conferences, but this is just the way we've done it the last couple times. So,
yeah, just a tag on that, a little bit, tag team. I don't think there may have been 1 or 2 presenters that their topics for some reason didn't seem to really apply. But for the most part, all presenters worked really well and pretty open to working with them. There's some things that we would do in terms of trying to combine different topics, because there's some that blend really well into each other, and those presenters that we suggested that to were really open to working with other presenters and combining their topics. So it's been really an inclusive process and a dialogue between the planning committee here and those presenters. So, but Harry and Paul, I think in terms of how there is word selection and how a topic may be reflected in public is really a critical part that we need to take those words to sincere advice, so I appreciate it. I think we have another Canadian $3 coming forward. Eh? As Dwayne would say, "Gunakshish, eh?" Actually, he said they don't say that, but I have to razz him a little bit.
My name is Emma Shorty. Can you hear me? Okay. I just want to say thank you for inviting us here. I thoroughly enjoyed being here. And I was very impressed yesterday when Harold Jacobs spoke. And he said that only Tlingit members and clan, if you are born a Tlingit into a clan, that you can become a clan leader. I was very impressed with it. And I just want to say that this has to be spoken more. We have to put it out there more often than it's being said. And because it is important to belong to a clan, and it's true that we are born with it. And I'm really sorry that I was taken from my mom when I was only 4, and I was put into a residential school. I repeat this every time I speak, and I'm getting kind of tired of doing it. I'm on the path of healing right now. I started my healing when, quite a while ago, and it was a long, hard journey, and I'm still on that path. And I really enjoyed my niece and my nephew over there. We talk quite a bit all the time, and we get together quite often. And it's gotten to a point where right now, instead of crying and feeling sorry for myself, when I talk about the years of my residential school, it's helping me to talk about it, and I'm even starting to laugh about it. Healing is one of the things that we need in all our communities, in the Yukon, and maybe here too. And I watched the beginning of the movie that Dwayne put on, and you could hear where the apology was made from the government of Canada. And every time I hear it, I cry. And tears still fall, but they're good tears now. They're happy tears. All this that happened to me during my years in residential school is behind me. It's time for us now to stop blaming and put all our hurts behind us and start helping each other, not just in the Yukon, but also here. We have to work together now. We have to come over here more often, and we have to invite our people, our neighbors, and our people to our homes. I think this is going to be the very first time that I've ever remembered that we are going to have a celebration, and we're inviting our people from here. And I'm really looking forward to it. I want to say thank you to all our people from here for giving us so much knowledge, giving us so much to remember, to take home and tell the rest of our people back home. And I want to say thank you, especially for my grandson, Kuduat. He received an invitation. He's only 11 years old, and he was so proud that he received that. And we brought him over. He's doing a journal because he's supposed to be in school. And instead of going to school, he's learning. He's doing a journal on everything that's happened here, and he's going to present it to his classroom. Thank you very much. Gunuchish. Gunuchish.
My name is Jacqueline Shorty. My Indian name is Kakagusti, and I have my son with me, Kuduat. And before I came, Steve, you got my email. Thank you for helping us when we came here. I had to struggle to get here, but it was so important for me to be here and to bring my son. We went to the workshop or the conference in 2007 in Sitka, and it just happened by chance that I went to that conference. And when we went there, it was, wow, it was incredible. You know, I was just blown away. When I went home, I just felt renewed, you know. I'm an inland Tlingit from the Coquitlam clan, and living in, my father is Tachange, which is Shoshone people from inland Yukon. And growing up, I've always kind of felt a little misplaced, and I could never understand why. And coming over here and seeing our culture, you know, there have always been questions about, are we doing things right in the Yukon? Is this correct? Because we've always been separated, you know, and one of the things that I'm hoping to see in the future with our clan conferences is that we begin to retrace where and why we were sent inland. I want to know that story. I want to be able to tell the truth of that story to my children so that they too understand. And as my mother said, that we have begun a journey of healing at home with our people in residential school, you know, the effects of residential school in our families. And one of the things that occurred to me the other day when I was at Dwayne's showing here was that for me, I realized that it wasn't just residential school that I was feeling the effects of, but it was also the effects of being disengaged or removed from our bigger nation of Tlingit people. And I wanted to know more about my family, my grandfather Fox, my grandmother Fox, who was born on Douglas Island. I wanted to know more about who they were. Where did they come from? Where did I come from? So I really hope that you'll come inland to the Yukon and see the journey that we and our ancestors made, because there have been tears that have come down from that journey, from being away from all of the family out here. You know, now it's a time for us to come back together, and I'm really looking forward to it. And from this clan conference, some of the things that I learned the most, and I think that the thing that drew me in again was knowing, when I looked at your schedule, was you know, how to become a clan leader. You know, as a mother, I'm a single mother, and so I have 2 boys, and it's important for me, you know, to bring back our culture. Yes. So for me, it's been how do I teach my children the ways of our elders and our ancestors? How do I teach my boys to become warriors? You know, encouraging them to not just grow their hair, but to also to live that way, to do the ceremonies, the puberty ceremonies. Those are the things that we want to know, that I want to know. Is that as parents, how do we become parents again, but traditional parents? And thank you once again for all the work that you've done. And I just have to say that I lift up my hands to you. I want to thank you for all of that because it's so rich. And I certainly will take it home and apply it to my everyday living. Gunalchish. Hi.
Gunalchish. Gerry, can I say something?
Oh, absolutely.
I just wanted to answer you before you go out the door. That, you know, we can pray for anything. We can ask for our clan systems to come back. All that's accessible to us. It didn't go away. It's just that we forgot it. Events help us forget it. Things change. But if you want those things back, pray for them. Ask for them. They'll come back to you. That's how it is. And just like Wayne, he says, finding our voice, that's how it is. When we ask the Holy Spirit to guide us, all of a sudden our voice starts to change. And we find our voice. And laughter will return to us, I guarantee you. Thank you. Thank you for asking that.
I appreciate that too. My name is Barbara Kediante Nelson, and I just wanted to give you some feedback. And I, standing on this side of the portrait of Andy, just so that I could be true to his vision of the Clan Conference. This is the first Clan Conference I've ever attended, most likely, or the reasons were location and other conflicts of fishing time, etc. I like the fact that it was held during Gold Medal. It gave some of us a reason to get out among our people and faces and have a different place to meet. And I knew too that we would just have to prioritize our time to get here. I thought 8 o'clock was a little bit too early, but we got here. Let me also explain that while it was the Juneau School District that I'm working through, it was through the Alaska Native Education Program grants that we were able to invite families and teachers to come to attend this conference. And it met an objective for professional development training. And so my mission is not just to provide cultural competence opportunities for our educators, but which would further the gap between ourselves and our children, but also to, more importantly, to invite the families and particularly the elders, so that we're truly engaged in place-based paradigms. And for me, the paradigm that I've always worked off, let me stop a little bit here and just say that I was teaching at Juneau Douglas High School, and I've worked for Sea Alaska Heritage Institute and the corporation on and off, as well as commercial fishing. But an opportunity came before me, and I had to take a step out in the dark. And the opportunity was an opening at Sea Alaska Heritage Institute to develop culturally relevant place-based curricula. And at that time in Southeast Alaska, place-based was a fairly new term, and it was one that Andy Hope was very familiar with, as he was involved in RC up north, who have enviably developed curriculum to help perpetuate culture. And down in this area, we don't teach culture as we do try to teach through culture, because again, that's not necessarily the district's mission. However, it's a means by which our children learn best. The gap between achieving and non-achieving for a Native student has much to do with content and the way we do it. And so that's the struggle, that's the balance. And the paradigm for developing this kind of curriculum is that you have the educator, you have the student, and you have the community, which is the family and the indigenous people and the knowledge. And if one of those pieces, one of those persons aren't represented in that engagement, then you really don't have place-based curricula. What was occurring here in the last 3.5 days met that criteria. And let me just tell you a couple other frames. James Bank coined it very nicely about multicultural ed, that the highest level of achieving that is that there's a transformation. It's not just about having heroes and holidays on every other month or what have you, but it's that the content challenges our way of seeing and doing things, and just as Andy has always done. So we strive to meet the highest level of multicultural education by changing hearts and minds so that the environment is much more or less hostile. And I hate to use the word tolerant, but my time in the school district is that I have to learn more tolerance. The other paradigm that I wanted to point out is that true to place-based education is the whole purpose and intent is to heal the land and its people. And to do that, you always must remember the oratory, the oral narratives. And if that's not present, then we really aren't hearing the voices of our ancestors, and we're not getting their guidance, and we're not honoring them. And so I was very pleased, again, to hear often in our company oral narratives and oratory that, again, met that need. And it was very evidenced when I spoke the other day about working in a very hostile environment, and one that is really seeped with racism and discrimination. A gentleman I know, Wilbur, came up to me and he handed me a gift that he was given by one of our presenters from Teslin, and it was a little cedar woven corn, for lack of a better word, and he said, "Here, I want you to hold this while you're here. You're still needing to be healed." And this is a man who his mother was murdered and his sister committed suicide, and he's had all kinds of trauma, and yet he gave it to me to be healed. And I thought that was just a real pinnacle and evidence of the success of this conference. I wanted to say too that I come from a family of 9 siblings, 3 brothers and 6 sisters, and one of my sisters, who's very well involved in the Alaska Native Sisterhood, always says, if you want to know how to get something done, ask our brothers. If you want to get it done, ask our sisters. And so I'm really, I congratulate you 5 brothers that you got it done. And I'm sure with Ellen Hope Hayes standing up, but perhaps that was what balanced out all of this energy or gave it some direction. I was real cautious about coming up here because I knew that as I started to speak that it was pretty kind of sneaky. When you open your mouth and you put your energy behind helping out. I wanted to say that I'm able to offer college credit for my staff to have come here. I'm able to use the grant monies as professional development because of the scholarship. Because of the scholarship here. Also, that's not all of it. It was engaging again with families, engaging with youth. And I brought the children in with a technology project. And Steve emailed me on Monday and said, can you give a description of what you intend to do? That was on Monday by noon. And already by Tuesday evening, they had the program printed up. I thought that was pretty amazing. Holy cow, I'm sorry it took so long. I imagine you were waiting for that to come through. But one of the things that I was looking for and hoping for, and I think it could improve on, is while our educators, our cultural specialists, and Indian Studies program staff, Native educators, come to this conference, they're looking for curriculum, they're looking for resources, and they're looking for permission. Even our non-Native teachers who are now engaged in developing culturally responsive curricula still hesitate because they don't feel they have the permission. And you know what? I like that fear. It's okay to have that fear. It means that you better ask, and sometimes they're courageous enough to ask. I could go on, and I'll just leave you some of my notes here. That really what's motivating me and my niece Dion Cadiente Blattner is that we truly are that generation that has to build that bridge between ourselves and what we knew to have been a wonderful existence of intelligence, of dignity, of honor, of pride. And the students that were interviewing elders here gave up their spring break to do that. I thought that was just incredible. And the teachers that came here, they really needed to rest. And they came here, and I saw them laughing. I saw them engaged, and while they were working, I knew that they were healing too from the arduous task of being an educator, and particularly in that kind of environment. So I thank you for that. But I was going to start to mention that one of the things that needs to be said is that the students that are most at risk are our young men. They're needing what you referred to earlier, a panel that or a group that would meet of men to help raise up our young men. And certainly our young women are in need of that as well, but we need our men to be men and our young men to learn how to be that. So I hope that you keep your finger on that pulse. I was involved in, Dion and I were involved in the first 3 Plitzine camps sponsored by Sea Alaska Heritage Institute. And I'll just close with this story because, again, it honors our youth that are searching for their sense of who they are. I had 3 dignitaries, the CEO from Sea Alaska Corporation, the president of SHI, and the chairman of Sea Alaska Corporation coming to visit and speak with the 30 youth. And I said to the students, I'm really nervous about this because you have to be at your best behavior. And if one of you can come up with a stellar question, then, there's something in it for you. I was bribing them. And it was hot. We blew it. We had just fed them lunch, high starch. They were nodding off. They were trying to stay awake. And they were listening to these presenters and not that engaged. And I looked like, oh my gosh, help. I put up the signals, please somebody ask something that would stir this dialogue. And Duck Duth, otherwise known as Israel Katzik, then a junior, stood up and he said, during this camp, I've learned that our culture and our language is endangered, and I'm really concerned about that. But this is my question. How much change should we tolerate? And of course, their jaws dropped. Mine dropped. And I thought, touchdown. This is our leadership. And so too the legacy of Andy. He pushed the margins, just like Charlie Joseph did in the Sitka Elders Clan Conference, or Elders Conference. He pushed the margins past what we know as traditional, what we know as protocol, or we've referred to that now. In this environment, what I've noticed is that there's a high level of accountability for linguists, for anthropologists, for educators, for institutions, for clan leaders to be held up under our scrutiny. So many times those persons take information and then the communities never hear back. This is an opportunity for the community to give them feedback or just, watch them and listen and hold them accountable. So that's I like that. And more so, I started to say and I didn't finish, is that when our teachers come to these things, conferences, that we feel wealthy when we walk away with resources. And if your presenters could provide and be asked to provide PowerPoints, more contact information, help unpack the materials that they authored, and perhaps even have some videos and video guides that a body has come together and said, this is the priorities, the values, the essence of this work, so that the cultural specialists can perpetuate those values in that spirit. And I'll just stop with that, and again, just congratulate you. I can only imagine how difficult it was to move forward without Andy at the helm, and I really appreciate that the attempt was made and that it was successful. So Ganesh Chish.
Steve, we owe Barbara a special thanks. Maybe you could tell a little bit about how she come on board and what she did for us.
Well, there is in the program, there's a little bit about the students project, but while we were going through the the sessions, there were interviews going on over in one of the smaller rooms of elders and others who the students invited to speak, and they were guided along the whole project by their elders who facilitated the making an arrangements for people to be interviewed. And I'm not sure what the final result would be of the interviews as far as if they're going to be put on the internet or I think that was the ultimate plan, was that they were going to be going onto the internet, and so that's my understanding of it.
The contribution money too was good.
The
money aspect.
Oh yeah, and yes, and the Juneau School District really did come through for us as far as financial support. So we have we owe them a great deal of thanks.
Give Barbara another hand. She did it. Thank you, Barbara.
Want to recognize Nora Downhauer, Marcia Hotch. Are you still here? And Dion Cariente Lati. You want to stand, Dion? They're part of the planning committee. There's Marcia. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I was told about the interviews back there in the little room that we were going to be put in a capsule, time capsule. So I just wanted to mention that.
The Dick Clarks of Klinga Country. And Marcia, I don't know, it looks like you're getting ready to go. Did you want to say a couple of words? I have to apologize, but don't mean to be rude. And then Dion, after this lady here, after Marcia.
I would just like to say Gunnath Chish Kunach Tlakat Yuhan for all of your dedication and running with the vision that Andy had. And I knew Andy for several years ago from the first clan conference in Klukwan, and he's always been respectful, and he's always encouraged me, and I think it's with that encouragement in a very gentle and quiet way I got involved in what I'm involved in today. And so, and before, when I found out that he had come back home, back down south, I gave him a call and we had a good conversation, and I felt good about it. But he did ask me if I'd help out. I didn't know what I could do, but I thank you guys, and I hope that next time I have a better idea and we can contribute, you know. And I think one of the things that I picked up out there was that we needed more things for our youth, and that's what I'm picking up. And it's not just the ones that spoke here, it was out there too. And so once again, Gunalchish, and to Tlakat Yuhansu Gunalchish for all that. It was just wonderful being in each other's presence, looking Chayiyadakholkeni Owe Ach Tu Tlitsinj Chahalis Guhas Guas Wushtin Wush Tuk Tutin. Maybe we see and enjoy the presence of our ancestors as we look at one another. Gunalchish.
Kunishish. My name is Marilyn, and my Tlingit name is Yadal Tin. I'm from the Carcross Tagish First Nation, and there's just a few things that I wanted to say. And first of all, thank you so much, Kunishish, for having this conference and for carrying through Andy's vision and doing something that I can just imagine must be so difficult and painful for you. I also wanted to acknowledge the academic atmosphere here, and also the room for the traditional parts as well. I think it's a really beautiful interplay of both of them. And I say that because sometimes I feel, you know, at being an inland Tlingit person with a master's degree, that a lot of people don't really value that, or perhaps maybe they don't understand how hard it is to do that. And sometimes there really isn't room for the academic side of me. But I also really love that about this conference, that there's room for both. And I noticed that in Sitka 2 years ago, that that experience was actually a life-changing experience for me. And in many ways, because both of those ways of knowing, paradigms, are able to exist together. So it was really a life-altering experience for me. I also wanted to just say the things that I love about this conference. I'm not going to make any suggestions to you, but I'm just going to tell you what I love. I love that culture can exist and song and dance can break out at any moment. And that was really a beautiful thing in Sitka. Maybe it was because where we were, the environment, you know, but it just seemed like when things need to be done, they're done. I love that we're able to facilitate and establish and foster relationships. And beginning in Sitka, I met Ed Will, and is he here? He's our clan leader. And that's a very important relationship for us, the Ducklawady people in the inland, and the Ducklawady people on the coast. And since then, we've been working towards strengthening our relationship and trying to reunite our people, our nation, because there's no difference, there's no separation. We're one people. So that's been a really important aspect of this conference for me, and which I love as well. There's lots of things that I love, the good food and how wonderful the people on the coast are, how kind and loving you've been to us, and how accepting and welcoming that you've been to us. And even when we make mistakes, you treat us with such kindness and love. And, you know, really that means a lot to us. I'm happy that elders can be here and that young people can be here and that we can go through this process together. So Gunishish, I also wanted to say a special thank you to Ray Dennis, who is going to be my cousin-in-law. Leslie's a very lucky lady, and we are a lucky family that he will be a part of our family. And he's done a lot of stuff for us. He's done a lot of teachings and, you know, lots of things I can't mention. So Gunishish, Ray, and we're happy that you're going to be a part of our family. So thank you.
I just want to thank all of you for all your hard work, and to say that I loved every minute of the conference, and to also mention that I lived in Sitka many, many years ago, and I met some hopes. And when you introduced your family last night, I was so totally confused. I don't know whether I knew Grandpa or Grandma, or the second bunch or the last bunch, but I do know I know your brother. And I remember speaking to him in Sitka saying, you know, on your map, you know, we were talking about his first map or something. I said, you have to remember Tagish Kwan people, you know, and we had this great big discussion. So when I seen the map, I looked at it very quickly and it's there, you know. Isn't that something?
Yeah,
There's just total few seconds we were talking, and I mentioned that, and I think that really is something that little detail he remembered, you know, was so amazing. The other thing that I really loved was your workshop.
Thank you.
I thought you gave a brilliant, brilliant workshop.
Thank you.
I also thought you should have said, all of you were created equal, and all of you are noble, you know, and this has given us, your everything has given us that goal to work towards, and also to remember that we are noble people. And, you know, a lot has tried to take it away from us, but here we are in this year, at this time, with this conference. It is a brilliant idea your brother had. Brilliant. And he will go down in history And I think somewhere he should get an award for that, because he's given our people, whether it's Canadians or Americans, because we have no borders, and we know that, that some of us came down from inland, like the Ducklewaties. Our migration story is that we left coming down the Stikine down to your country here, and some of you came up to us, towards our way. So we'll always remember that, your brother has done this for our people and for generations. And the only thing I can suggest is have more storytelling. Thank you. Cheese.
Cheese.
I just want to share with the planning committee that I'm very honored to have been invited to support you, and I am very apologetic that I was not able to do more. I'm a grant writer, and I was writing grants all the way till Wednesday morning. But what I want to say is that the work that I do is very much, it's very much an extension of what Andy had envisioned. He envisioned culturally responsive education for our youth. And I believe very much that had I not met Andy and had he not had that vision, my life today would be very different. The work that I do, which really is just grant writing to make projects possible for our children and our families, that's an extension of Andy and his vision. And I was a little puzzled to be asked to be on this committee, and certainly disheartened that I wasn't able to do more. But I know when I read Andy, about Andy after he had passed, and saw that his honorary pallbearer was Van Morrison, I thought here was a kindred spirit, and this makes very, very good sense. Van Morrison is a very celebrated singer within our family, and so I think we share the same spirit. What I also want to say is I appreciate your allowing the children to perform The Woman Who Married the Bear. I know they were petrified to be up here in front of a video camera, but it was good for them, and it was one step towards, I think, including our youth, as well as the video documentation with the high school students. We talk about passing our knowledge on to our children, and I think this is a very important experience to invite them into in meaningful ways, where they have a role, maybe partly to do presentations, or as the other young man was doing, he was doing journals. That would be meaningful as well. So I thank you for inviting the kids in. I know that was a wonderful thing for that to be videotaped, so hopefully we can share that with their families. And then I just want to say thank you so much for your hard work. It's greatly appreciated, and I welcome supporting you in better ways in the future. Gunukchish.
Gunukchish. Dion, don't run off. I need to talk to you.
Thank you, Dion. I see Ray's coming up. I wanted Edwell to come forward too, so we could have an eagle-raven balance on the clan way. If you want to join, come forward, Edwell and Ray, both of you at the same time. It's kind of fitting that you're here right now. We had been talking about the mix of traditional knowledge and culture along with the academic part, and so it's great that you guys are here still.
Goodness, Chief. I see all the important people are still here. I'm compelled just to say goodness, Chief. Being an individual that has been involved in many different meetings watching them get prepared. I know that as you're sitting there very calm, I know that your feet have been running just like a duck under the water, swimming. And these are the little things that many of us have seen, and we appreciate it greatly. Dedicating this particular event this year to our brother, I say that because that's just the way he was, our brother. His vision has become our vision. His heartbeat has now become our heartbeat. And when I see my brother Gerry, I see your brother in you. It's the same when I look at anyone from your family. That's just what this little raven sees. I appreciate all that you do. Peter, I've seen you run around all over the place taking a lot of pictures, and I really appreciate it. There's a kindred spirit that you have with your family, and I greatly appreciate it. Steve, I've got no idea how in the world you got what you got done, because it always seems that you were somewhere inside the audience. But I got to understand that there was a lot of sleepless nights, and I wanted to lift you up because you wear the sign of my father's people, the Duklawedi, and you're a part of them. My uncle, Richard, there's always not enough time, not enough words to give encouragement. But know that whenever I see you and I wave at you, your little nephew loves you. Not because you love my auntie, but because of the work you do for our people. It's greatly seen. Brother Walter, there's nothing more encouraging that I've heard here than to understand that our Tlingit way of life can be equated to what's written in the Bible. We Tlingit people have always known that there was a higher power, something that created all of us. Ha Shagenya, Dikian Kau. That one, I woke up this morning and I said thank you, just for letting me be a part of today. It's just a simple thing, but he created me to be Tlingit. That's all I know how to do. We live in an era of time where sometimes we forget the one that watches over all of us. So with that, I want all of you to know, and those that work with you, you're uplifted in my prayers. I'm nobody special, but I just want you to know that. I do this because that's how I love my people. That's how I love our Tlingit way of being, is like that. Are folks still here from Canada?
Some.
Grandma Susie?
Right here.
And her partner?
No.
And they probably started going back to prepare up there.
You got to catch a ferry, I think.
I know these ones.
Yeah.
They're in line yet.
Okay.
But if we choose, which I'm sure we're going to accept, to be up there, I would like to be a part to help. That is my contribution to what we can get done up there. It's true. There is no border. There's no line. The only thing that separates us is how far my front porch is to where theirs is at. That's all it is. Today's technology gets us right next door to each other. And I think it'd be good for the rest of the world to see what we're doing, to see that we still can acknowledge the one that made us. It doesn't matter how he made you. You're here today. We get that equal part to lift him up just to say thank you. I say that to give my attention to my future in-laws. It's an honor that you have accepted me in the fashion that you have. It's an honor to share with what little I know. I give it to you because of my love, not just for one of you, but for all of you. That's just the way I feel. And if I ever stray, I know there's not a one of you that doesn't have a stick. I've seen you women in action. You women are pretty tough. And I'm grateful for it. The reason I'm grateful for it is because it causes this young man to rise up and stay firm in his teachings, in what his elders had taught him, and to make sure that when my aunt goes to sleep, I haven't embarrassed her, or I haven't embarrassed my father's people, or my grandfathers, or my brothers. With that, that is just my way of saying thank you to all of you, and saying thank you to our brother. Gunash Chish, Atlain Gunash Chish, ho.
Goodness Sheesh. First, I'd like to thank the sponsors, the individuals that sponsored this conference, and I'll get to thanking the committee here in just a minute. But I'd like to thank Ray for standing with me, opposites. It's so important that we understand how the opposites support you. I can't even tell you. When my mom passed away last month, the opposites stood by me and lifted me up. When Mark Jacobs passed away 3-4 years ago, the opposites were there again to hold me up and to keep me up. That's, I think, one of the most important key points that as a Tlingit I've understood, and I've informed my wife how important it is. Family is important, and how important the opposites are, because they're the ones that are holding us up. They're the ones that are standing by us when my mom passed away, when your mom passes away, when your brothers pass away. It's important to families. You're with family, but it's just as important when the opposites are there to hold you up. I'm always grateful for the Ravens when they hold me up and they support me. So Gunishish for that. I also want to thank the people that traveled from inland, coming such a long ways to be here and to share your knowledge. Not only, I'm very humbled, even though I'm a presenter, I'm humbled of all the knowledge that's here. It just makes you feel small when there's so much to learn. And this is such a great forum to give your knowledge away. Sharing your knowledge is such a fitting title for this conference. I think it's the best title of sharing your knowledge. I'd like to thank also Eric, I know, traveled a long ways to be here too. People have traveled a long ways to be here, and it's a key conference, and I know it's going to grow exponentially, and it's ever changing and ever growing. And I think the key point is we're all learning. I think that's the best part. Maybe there's some disagreements, maybe there's something you don't agree upon. That's okay. That's not the point. The point is we're learning from what our mistakes were. We're learning for what mistakes we made in the past. And we look to the future. I heard about the future, that we learn from what we've done and we make it better. And we're a better people because of that. And like Ray said, we should never forget, who put us here and how we came to be here on this great earth. Next, I'd like to thank individually Walter, Gunesh Chish. It's a lot of work that came through here. Richard, Gunesh Chish. And if you've been to conferences or been participating in anything that has to do with our knowledge as Tlingit people, I guarantee you will see one, if not all of these committee members up here helping us Tlingits, helping us spread the knowledge. It's so important. 1982, we started our celebrations to help spread our knowledge, to regain what we've lost. It hurts when we look back and, well, can we speak Tlingit now? Do we know how to hunt? Do we know how to fish? Do we know how to sing our songs? Do we know about our clan? And this is such a great forum for that now. And I believe this is just going to grow so fast. You're going to need a bigger committee, Steve. I believe in. Steve is always participating. And I don't know if you know this, and he's went with me on many, many occasions to document our repatriation. And I just want to thank you for this too, Steve, for all that you've done here. And same with Richard, all the documentation of our Tlingit culture. If you read any books or listen to any CDs, Richard Darwenhauer has something to do with that, and I thank you for that too. Gerry, I'm looking at your brother here. It's like he's looking at me. He's looking at all of us and what has happened here. He's very proud. I know it. I know for a fact. It's something that his vision, and you are carrying it on, has started this, and now it's just not going to stop. And I believe our knowledge we're going to rekindle what was lost many years ago as Tlingit people. And I thank all of you for being responsible for bringing this forward and holding up our people. And Peter, just about every event that I could think of that I've been around, sooner or later you're there and you're documenting and you're helping and you're holding our people up. This is what our opposites do, and this is what they've done for us as Tlingit people. I really want to thank all of you for holding us up, for keeping our spirits alive, keeping our language alive, keeping our culture alive. Gunesh Chish.
Was going to call on Walter in just 1 second so he could close us in prayer. We were fortunate enough to open up in prayer and wanted to just take a moment to say thank you to some of the other planning committee members who are not here. And that would include, we mentioned the women. Irene Dundas is not here right now, but she's another planning committee member. Harold Jacobs, Sergey Khan, and Ishmael Hope. Wanted to please give them a round of applause of acknowledgement. These gentlemen up here, I am exceptionally jealous because their wives are here in town. Mine was not able to make it because of circumstances in Sitka. She dearly wanted to. Vicky, am really looking forward to being at home with you. And also, I did want to say that the words that were spoken in terms of some suggestions, some gentle nudging, are definitely heard. And I really deeply thank you for taking the time to share with us your thoughts and suggestions. So with that, I would like to ask you to, those of you who choose to stand, please join us in prayer.
Speaking of wives, I want to thank my wife for letting me come here. She's so bossy. So let's pray. Grandfather Creator, you have blessed us with each other's presence. And to all our presenters, your voice came through. We're grateful and thankful. We ask now that you keep us safe as we journey to our homes, and especially our inland brothers and sisters as they go across that border that we don't recognize. And we ask you now for your inspiration and imagination come to us once again as we begin to plan for the next Sharing Our Knowledge conference. With that, I say, Gunashish, Gunashish. Amen.